What does it feel like failing? What is it like failing a lift? I didn't used to have the answer for this question, guys, but the latest maybe 2 years I really crafted a new perspective to this. In a previous episode when I talked about high repetitions in your training, I mentioned me being a lazy squatter, not using depth, not training hard enough simply on the big lifts. I want to dedicate today's episode to really put this out there. You need to fail, whether you like it or not. You see all these videos too where they state failure training is killing your gains and can slow down your gains or something like that. I absolutely agree with one condition. I agree with this if you'll just add it left and right, but I do think it's very beneficial if and only if you program it correctly and regarding to your own body and goals. If you want to go to failure, you need to know your body. And like I said, it depends on your goal. Is your goal powerlifting or like bodybuilding? It's two very different approaches. Training to failure will benefit you a lot more to bodybuilding than powerlifting, because let's be honest, all you aim for in powerlifting is lifting heavy, 1 repetition, nothing else. It's not doing a squat for 20 reps, no. And powerlifting is a lot about practicing one certain thing to get as good and effective at it as possible, so it will be much more beneficial for athletes like bodybuilders. So why am I doing it? Why do I like it so much? I strive to train for powerlifting, so what gives? Well, there's 2 reasons I do it personally: mentality and endurance. And let's be honest, it's temporary, because later on I won't be doing it as much when I start competing in powerlifting. And I'm already switched to a more powerlifting approach because I want to be competing next year or maybe already this autumn. So I'm already switched to this type of mindset, this type of training. But I still want to include these higher reps methods, this kind of training, because I've seen they helped me so much in the past, so why not keep doing them? I mean, I will still focus a lot on compounds on low reps because that's what I need for comp, but the high reps, the high reps is a big part of why I increased my performance so much in the past time. For me, it's just a lot of working on a weak point. That's it. Like me on the squat, I always felt like something was missing. Like I didn't train hard enough nor challenge myself when it came to the squat. I want to address all 3 lifts, but I think the squat is a great example for the majority of people to relate to this segment. It's not easy to squat. It's scary, quite frankly. Especially when you increase the weight more and more and more. I mean, it's like sitting down with a 400-pound barbell. I'm not there yet, but I'm about to be. Above your upper back, if you think about it. It's quite intense, quite scary, but yet exciting. But one major factor and kind of a limitation that held me back for almost day 1 since I started out with this magnificent sport is one simple sensation, really: the exposure to failure. I wanted to succeed, to increase my abilities, to develop and get better and better. But one thing that I very rarely did was fail a lift. I mean, really fail a lift. I'm not talking about supersetting or training to failure in your arm or chest training. I'm talking about the big boys. The compound lifts, the squat, the bench and the deadlift. Why is this so hard? I mean, when I think about it, I think most people are afraid of failing because of the same reason they might be afraid of things like failing or rejection generally in life itself. It puts them out of their comfort zone, puts them in a vulnerable position. If you fail a lift, you might be afraid of maybe people watching, getting hurt, or even just don't know what to expect because you never really do it. At least this was it for me. When I look back at my training, I very rarely scored it to a max or something like 9 or 10 RP. I almost always had reps left in the tank. And how can you move forward and develop as an athlete if you don't know how it feels to even fail? I mean, that's just absurd to me. Immediately when I started to practice this, to get used to the feeling of actually pushing out reps until I couldn't even hold the bar or even stabilize the bar over my back in the squat. I mean, just drop the bar and use the safety rack if you're scared of hurting others. But please, oh please, achieve failure. And I'm not saying you should push out 100 or 110% now every single workout. That's not sustainable for recovery, but I'm just referring to the feeling of a planned fail lift. What do I mean with this? With a planned fail lift, I mean that even though many of you have failed a lift due to lack of strength or misplaced technique or positioning, how many of you have failed a lift actually because you wanted to? Because you literally couldn't move the bar 1 inch further due to that you gave it your all. I mean, you should always aim to do what's difficult, what's hard, what's uncomfortable. Because guess what? If you manage to do these difficult things, nothing can stop you. I know it maybe sounds cliche or like it's easy to sit here and say these things, but it's really the way it is. And training to failure can be harming and way too high in intensity or whatnot, but that's only if you program it carelessly. If you program it right, it could actually benefit you greatly. Whether you train for strength, aesthetics, or both, I think training to failure every now and then is actually very, very essential. Going back to the matter of absolutely training to failure, I want to put out the definition of it all. Performing an exercise to the point where the activated muscles are incapable of completing another complete repetition without assistance. You hear that? Incapable of performing another complete rep. Not that you don't have the stamina or don't have the will or motivation. You're actually physically, mentally, and simply overall incapable of moving another repetition by yourself. That's what it is. But with that being said, it's not only beneficial. Like I mentioned a minute ago, it's or could be too much intensity for a lot of people out there if you program it wrong. How do I program it for optimal results then? I would say with variety and the right amount. You don't want to be supersetting, drop setting, or even just going to absolute failure all the time. That's not going to work. You need to space it out. You need to use variations, both in volume and exercise selection. Use it to your advantage, because it's a tool. That's all it is, guys. We also need to think about it like this. How many reps of a set is so-called effective reps? Many tend to believe that the reps that are so-called ineffective or closer to failure is the ones that is most effective for building muscle. In a study by Goto and company, published 2015, a group that did 10 reps continuously without resting and until failure tended to see 12.9% more muscle growth in comparison to a group that divided these reps in 2 sets with a 30-second rest mid-set. But there's a lot of studies out there that are talking about that there's no difference between training to failure and not doing it, and even studies that show that beginners may benefit more of this kind of training than a more advanced lifter when it comes to growing muscle. And then again, we need to look at what kind of efficiency each span of rep range have and what you're trying to achieve with these ranges. I mean, as I stated previously, I can go up to ranges like 30, even 40 reps in my AMRAP sets, which I often use as a finishing set in my compounds when it comes to movements like the squat, even hack squat or stuff like that. But I benefit and do these sets because I want to increase my endurance and my mental state when it comes to lifting. I was looking at it at a hypertrophic standpoint, or doing it because I want to build muscle is really not that effective. Because to build muscle, you don't need to do 25, 30, even 40 reps. Like I said, I do it because I want to get used to that feeling, to get used to that uncomfortable situation. So it all depends what you want to get out of it as well here. Like I said, a 40 rep AMRAP set isn't gonna help my strength directly in a lift, but due to insane time under tension here, it will help my endurance strength and ability to really keep that muscle under higher tension during a longer period of time. And that's what I personally want to better. But yeah, that was all for me today. I hope you enjoyed today's talk. Hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time.